Humanities, and I want to thank everyone for turning up today. I know it's an incredibly busy time of the year, so I'm really appreciative of you turning out. We plan this to be a free-flowing dialogue between faculty, community members, and grad students, and I think it's shaped up that way so far. So we're now in the third phase of the program for today. I hope you've enjoyed our panel so far, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from the third and final panel. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. Ted Hewitt, the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council Executive Vice President, and as Mo mentioned this morning, was a graduate student here at MAC, and as he attested himself, got all his degrees from MAC, so welcome home. Since then, Ted has had a distinguished career in academia, publishing extensively on issues related to social movements, local government, and international cooperation for urban development in Latin America. His work has featured in a range of academic journals, including CITES, the Journal of Latin American Studies, the Journal of Development Areas, Ted World Quarterly, and Habitat International. He is a leading Canadian authority on Brazil. He has served as a public policy scholar at the Brazil Institute at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars in Washington, D.C., and in 2002 was named Commander of the Order of Rio Branco by the Brazil Ministry of Foreign Relations. Ted came to SSHRC in 2012 from Western University, where he served as Vice President, Research and International Relations from 2004 to 2011. His recent research is focused on national and international innovation systems, with emphasis on the roles played by university, industry, and government in promoting economic prosperity in the 21st century. Please join me in welcoming Ted to speak to us today.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Now, I guess one way I could start this, if I just wanted to generate a whole lot of discussion, would be simply to say, hi, I'm Ted Hewitt, and I'm a sociologist. Okay, the rest of you will get it as you discuss amongst yourselves. Anyway, I want to talk for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then maybe in the spirit of the session, engage in a little bit of discussion, or if there are particular questions about SSHRC, and Ursula Goebel is here with me, as I mentioned earlier, so between the two of us, we should be able to answer your questions. I want to start with something that is a little controversial in some sense, and that has to do with how we view the social sciences and humanities ourselves as academics. But maybe I'll start with a bit of a survey, because I just kind of like to know who's in the room. So, how many students, grad students? Excellent. Any undergrads? Okay, very good. Welcome. Faculty and humanities, broadly, including history, social science? Okay, excellent. So we all feel at home now, we know each other. I went to a talk a few years ago, and I won't mention where or who the speaker was, but it was a humanist who had won a prestigious award at the university where I was at. And she spoke for about 15 minutes extolling the virtues of her discipline by saying how useless it was. And this was controversial. It was meant to be tongue-in-cheek. But she said, well, you know, in the humanities, we produce useless research, and we're proud of it. And then went on to explain why. And what she was getting at was, research does not always have an obvious utility. It's not always undertaken in service of the community or in the service of things that create jobs and value, and that in fact we should celebrate that. Now, unfortunately, I think it didn't quite work the way she thought it was going to work. Because by claiming it was useless, she had unfortunately sort of devalued the exercise, because we all know that in fact the work that we do, and we all very much believe that the things that we do have use of value. From the knowledge that drives intellect and creates an enlightened citizenry, to improvements in policy and services, all the way to the content that drives some 600,000 jobs in this country in the cultural sector, if you think about it. All the things that you will have today to read, all the internet content possibly that you will look at, the television programming, theater, film, music, and so forth, all produced by, ultimately, research in our sector and creative activity. So we have, I believe, in fact, a strong sense of utility. And increasingly, we drive this not alone, but in collaboration with others. If you look at, for example, trends in SSHRC applications in recent years in all of our programs, there is a definite trend towards multiple authorship involving, on average, 2 to 3 applicants as opposed to single applicant applications of the past. And in fact, scholars are collaborating more frequently with colleagues from other disciplines. One study, and I'm not doing PowerPoint today, and you won't be able to see that, but one study that was done compares social sciences to humanities, and then as a subset of humanities, typically, in most universities, history. And about a third of each of those groupings claim that they are quite disciplinary. About a third, only about a third. More than a third claim that they are quite interdisciplinary, and about a quarter, with the exception of history, which drops a little bit lower to about 15%, about a quarter on average, claim that they are extremely interdisciplinary. And that's a huge change from the past. But we're not just talking about interdisciplinarity. Along with this increasing collaboration among researchers across the disciplines, there's increasing evidence of a broad opening up of the academy to research collaboration within a wide variety of partners, as we've heard this morning, in the private sector, the public sector, the not-for-profit sector, and this conference today is really a testament to that level of activity. In terms of data, some of the trends we've seen from the United States over the last few years, a study done by the National Science Foundation. Is that correct? Is it national or natural? No one knows. National. Okay. Because we always make this mistake with NSERC, our colleagues, people call it the National Science and Engineering Research Foundation. The National Science Foundation released a report in August 2012. The study found that research funds transferred to external research partners by U.S. universities for the purposes of collaboration increased by 10% from 2000 until 2009. So that means the amount of money that comes into a university and then gets transferred out to support collaborative activity increased by 10 to 15% actually over that period. So this is actually quite a significant indicator of the amount of collaborative work that we're doing. If you look at Canada, we have evidence of similar trends, and right across the disciplines, in social sciences and humanities, the disciplines that focus on human thought and behavior, I would argue, in fact, that we've undergone a major transition in recent years. The scope, the complexity of research have, in fact, grown immeasurably as research questions become more complex, research findings ever more in demand by institutions, communities, certainly business. So why has this happened? Why do we see so much more of this than we have in the past? I would posit there are probably, well, there are a number of reasons, but I would posit probably 3. Communities, academics, business, working together, creating, building mutual understanding. We see an increase, a natural increase in knowledge production as a result of this, both quantitatively and qualitatively. It's contributed to our stock of knowledge, further informs research and teaching, and creates a kind of virtuous cycle as a result. Secondly, we all know the kind of opportunities that collaborative research of this kind, with community, industry, and other partners, the kind of research that builds creates real life experience for students and also for researchers. And thirdly, and this is a big piece and something we heard about a little bit earlier today, it provides access to field research opportunities. I mentioned people and talent, so people that you can work with in these sectors you might not normally do, and data that might not be available otherwise. And we saw this morning in one of the panels in the discussion about music download data. There was only one way really to get that data, and that was in partnership with Nokia. There are many, many examples of massive data sets that are now being made available to researchers for lots of different reasons. Social media streams, I mean, to get your hands on that, to be able to understand trend analysis, to understand the events that had occurred, for example, within the Middle East and elsewhere. IBM certainly understands this with the creation of the new cloud computing facility, using primarily social data, user data from hospitals, from municipalities, from other sectors of society, which will then be pulled together to be used as data set resource for examination of social issues. One hospital, in fact, not a hospital, whole province, British Columbia, is thinking about taking its healthcare user data, anonymizing it, and putting it on the web so that anyone can get access to it, so they can investigate some of the same kinds of trends that were being discussed this morning in the case of the music download data from Nokia. This is where we're going, and this is how these data are increasingly accessed. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't issues, and we've heard about these this morning, and I suspect we'll hear about it again in the next session with respect to IP, collaboration, integrity, and so forth. But on the main, this is the trend. So at SSHRC, what evidence do we have that this growth in partnered research is actually starting to take off? I mentioned one piece of data earlier. We have some other studies that looked at partner and sponsoring agencies cited in funding applications to SSHRC. They've increased from fewer than 100 in 1998 to over 2,200 today. So people who are applying to various SSHRC programs each year, per year, when they're mentioning community partners, private sector and other partners, 100 over 10 years ago, and now over 2,200. So everybody, almost everybody, is partnering at some level. Well over half of these were from the higher education and not-for-profit sector. It's true, and one would expect that. But 10% were from business, and another 20% from agencies in government. Another study that was done by the Canada Foundation for Innovation showed pretty much similar results. They looked at 1,400 projects over a period of several years in 2012. They found that 80% of those projects, and if you know and have worked with Canada Foundation for Innovation, you wouldn't be surprised, 80% of those projects included linkages with partners. 76% involved collaborations with the academic sector, again, less of a surprise. 26% counted partners in the public and not-for-profit sector, and 29% involved partnerships with the private sector. So, how do we fare as social sciences and humanities? In fact, the numbers are very, very similar within the CFI fold. So within social sciences and humanities specifically, researchers were more likely to engage with the public and not-for-profit sector, not surprising, close to 40% of projects reporting those linkages. However, 20% reported linkages with private sector partners, just below the mean engagement rate, as I mentioned before, of about 29%. So in our disciplines, we are almost as likely to partner with companies and private sector organizations. Again, coming back to SSHRC, some of the studies that we did recently, we looked at 1,500 final research reports between 2010 and 2011. These indicated that council funding had supported projects which together counted linkages with no less than 1,700 partner organizations. And when we asked specifically about where they thought the impact of this research was, the results were kind of amazing. It comes back to my comment earlier about the utility of the work that we did. 11% of the lead researchers from these reports believed that their work would directly benefit the economy in the social sciences and humanities. 31% anticipated contributions to arts and culture, direct contributions, and 23% to the development of government policies and programs. This is a fantastic result. At SSHRC, over the last few years, we have renewed our program architecture, as we call it, in terms of the programs that we have developed, much simplified, as I'm sure many have encountered in their application adventures over the last year or two. This, in and of itself, has engendered a significant increase in the number of applications which bring forward partnership opportunities. Right across our Insight, Talent, and Connections programming, we introduced our partnership grants and partnership development grant program a couple of years ago. We have some literature that we had left at the back, although I don't see it now unless it's under the sandwiches So we might have to go back and have a look for that. A couple of years ago, we funded the first round of these last year. We invested over a period of between 4 and 7 years about $70 million in these various projects. We also asked for the first time, officially, as part of a program, for applicants to find and demonstrate matching funds. And I remember the early discussions with respect to this. People said, well, you know, in our disciplines, that's pretty hard. You know, people aren't really looking to do that, and you know, this is more for the sciences or for the life sciences. That $70 million, however, was indeed matched with partners' contributions, whether in kind or in cash, to a total of about $68 million. So in effect, we doubled the contribution to these various projects through the course of this initiative. About 12 million, or 20% of the total, came from the private sector. And in total, some 30 companies had signed on as key partners through this program. Multi-sector partnerships, I have no doubt, will continue to yield benefits across communities, organizations, and industries. And I have a few that I just want to talk about a little bit, including some from this institution. For example, everyone has heard of the Canadian corporation J.D. Irving. They have a number of interests in forestry, oil, their forestry sector, linked with a number of non-governmental organizations and the University of New Brunswick to identify a collective approach on issues such as biodiversity conservation, forest habitats, climate change, carbon emissions, in order to ensure a vibrant economic and environmental future for the region. There was a multidisciplinary research initiative at the University of Waterloo involving Christie Digital, which brought stunning display technology to Canadian cinemas you're probably not even aware of, but enjoy every day, by applying findings from a study at the Université du Québec at Trois-Rivières regarding high-precision mechanical equipment maker Usinatech. Here at McMaster, and I have a list, and aside from the many projects that we have been talking about today, recent PhD graduate from the Department of Geography, who was funded through the Vanier program, developed a project on dengue fever and development that later turned into a collaboration and served as a template for an initiative known as Water Without Borders, involving, some of you probably know about, McMaster, the United Nations International Network on Water, Environment and Health, and other organizations. The PEPSO initiative at MAC, the Poverty, Employment, Precarity in Southern Ontario project, was funded through a community university research alliance. Project, as the literature suggests, will leave a legacy of enhanced community capacity to conduct research and to advocate on behalf of those most affected by changing labor and market dynamics. And I'll mention just a couple more. You may be aware of the McMaster Poverty Initiative. Again, members of the community, the McMaster community, working with local communities and organizations such as the 25 and 5 Network, the Roundtable for Poverty Reduction, Living Wage Hamilton, in order to reduce poverty through direct collaboration, and the Indigenous Health Research Knowledge Transfer Network, which is an extension of the Indigenous Health Research Development Program. Again, policymakers, Aboriginal communities looking to find ways to improve health. Not everybody is going to be involved in projects that are going to involve these kinds of collaborations and partnerships. And in fact, for many years, I worked pretty much alone. I occasionally will work in some of the work I do on Brazil with other organizations. But it is a trend, and we're going to see more and more of this. And in part, big data, as I talked about earlier, will drive some of this activity as we try and get at some of this information, work together with partner communities, and unlock some of the quantitative and qualitative information that is there within. I want to say a couple of words about SSHRC before I close, and we can open up in a bit of a discussion. I'm only one of approximately 200 people that works at Social Science and Humanities Research Council in Ottawa, and who are very much connected with our community. We have, as I mentioned earlier, developed a number of new programs that will help to promote and support the very kinds of activities and initiatives that you're working on here today at McMaster. And I hope you'll consult our website and think about how many of these programs, such as partnerships, our Connections program, can assist the work you're doing here at McMaster and in your various communities. We have another related initiative that we've been working on for some time, the Canada's Future Challenges initiative, for about a year and a half. We've been consulting widely among our constituencies in social sciences and humanities, and also well beyond Ottawa, to try and get a sense of what those areas are and will be in future that we will be most preoccupied with as over the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's not a visioning exercise. It's about trying to figure out, for example, what the jobs of the future might be and how we'll manage in a community context and in a business context as a result of that. What does the future of the North hold for Canada? What and how will technology transform our society over the next several decades? And you'll be hearing more and more about this over the next few weeks as we set our challenges out into the community to challenge you. The last initiative I wanted to tell you a little bit about, and I know many of you or some of you would have been involved with this here at McMaster. We call it our Storytellers Initiative. I mentioned in my opening remarks that we do some really, really fine work, of great utility. In fact, we don't always tell our story the best way we need to tell it, and we don't always work together to do that in a very effective way. So what we had done under the direction of our communications division was to put the challenge out to students and say, okay, what do you know about the value of research in the social sciences and humanities? How might you best express that value through the various media and means that are available to you as students? We offered a small prize, not $1 million, in fact, a lot less than $1 million. We attracted, I believe, somewhere in the order of about 80 applications, 80 projects, higher, okay, it was even more than that, right across the country. And from that, we've used our panel of experts to whittle that down to about 25 finalists. We've been looking at these internally at CHRC to our great edification and entertainment, because they are absolutely amazing what the students have managed to do with this. The final 5 that will be judged by a preeminent Canadian panel will be presented at the World Social Science Forum, which I hope you will all attend in Montreal in October of this year. We are also going to be presenting our new suite of SSHRC Impact Awards at that event as well, if all goes as planned. We're hoping that you'll be able certainly to participate in the conference. We have something like 2,500 researchers coming from 58 countries, and SSHRC in particular is working hard to develop a number of special initiatives and sessions at this conference as well for your participation. So I think I will conclude with that. I think it's been an incredible morning in terms of the diversity and the breadth of the projects that folks are engaged in. We are losing our fear collectively of working with partners, and particularly with partners of whom in the past we were particularly wary, and that includes the business community. We are understanding how to deal with community partners, and we're understanding how to move knowledge from the work that we do to the use of those community partners, hence, once again, demonstrating the tremendous utility of the work that we do. So thank you very much for your attention.